They thought it was just a normal basement, until it started whispering their name. These aren't ghost stories. These are real accounts. Documented, unexplained, and deeply disturbing. You might want to turn the lights on for this, because once you hear what happened down there, your own basement will never feel safe again. These are 3 real basement horror stories that were never meant to be uncovered. I didn't believe in curses until I moved into the house on 17 Brierwood Lane. It started with the listing, a 3-bedroom colonial for less than market value, in a town known more for its antique charm than affordable housing. The real estate agent couldn't stop smiling as she took me through it. White crown molding, wood floors, a backyard that spilled out into a lazy creek. Her only caution? The basement floods sometimes. You'll want to check the sump pump. That should have been my first clue. It wasn't the usual smell of mildew or the chill that came up from the ground. It was the way she said it, quickly, like a line she'd rehearsed a dozen times, forced through a clenched smile. Still, I was 29 and desperate to move out of my 3rd-floor studio in the city. I signed the papers 2 days later. The first week was bliss. Fresh air, silent nights, space. I'd work from the dining table, set my laptop down by the window, sip black coffee while the birds chirped outside. I even started jogging again, pushing through the foggy mornings and smiling at the older couples walking their poodles and corgis. But the basement, it didn't feel like the rest of the house. While the upstairs was bright and airy, the basement sucked the warmth out of your chest the moment you stepped on the top stair. The first time I descended into it, something tightened around my throat, an invisible fist gripping just enough to make my skin prickle. It wasn't unfinished either. It had concrete walls, a smooth epoxy floor, recessed lighting. Someone had tried to make it livable. But nothing could mask that smell. Wet dirt and old iron. Like a garden that hadn't seen the sun in years. At the far end of the basement was a room with a heavy wooden door. Bolted from the outside. Yes, bolted. I thought maybe it was a storm shelter. Or maybe someone had kids and locked away dangerous tools. But when I opened it, it was empty. No shelves, no windows. The floor sloped slightly toward a drain in the center, rust-stained and cracked. The only thing in the room was a pair of iron hooks bolted into the ceiling. Thick, like the kind you'd see in a butcher shop. I told myself they were for hanging bikes or workout equipment. The second week, I started to hear noises. At first it was the house settling. Little creaks in the night, groans when the wind picked up. But soon, the sounds started coming from the basement. Always after 2 a.m. Soft thuds, scraping, like something heavy being dragged across the floor. One night, I stood at the top of the stairs and listened. The scraping came in intervals, followed by silence. Then again, like metal against concrete. It stopped the moment I turned on the light. I didn't go down. I told myself it was the sump pump. By the 3rd week, I was having trouble sleeping. I started locking the basement door at night. Something about the way it stood there at the end of the hall made me nervous, like a mouth waiting to breathe. Then, on a Wednesday morning, I woke up and found the door open. Wide open. I always double-checked the lock before bed. Always. I stood there in my pajama pants, the hallway light buzzing above me, staring down into the black maw below. I felt like something was looking back at me, something patient. I shut the door and installed a deadbolt that afternoon. Friday came and brought with it the storm. The first big one since I'd moved in. Rain battered the windows. The creek in the backyard swelled and rushed like an angry throat. Around midnight, the power went out. I had candles but no flashlight. My phone was at 9%. I sat in the living room listening to the wind howl outside. Then I heard it. The unmistakable sound of water. Rushing water. Coming from the basement. I grabbed a candle and ran to the door. I hesitated before opening it. Deadbolt still in place. Good. I turned the latch, pushed the door open. The smell hit me like a wall. Rot. Sewage. Something else I couldn't place, something sour and raw. Water covered the basement floor, about 2 inches deep and rising fast. I could hear it gurgling from somewhere near the back. The drain in the locked room. I waded through, pants soaking, goosebumps prickling up my arms. The basement lights flickered and buzzed as if threatening to come back to life. I reached the bolted room. The door was open. I had locked it. Water spilled from the drain, dark and thick like ink. It bubbled as if breathing. Then I saw it. Something moved beneath the water, something long and pale, like a finger, then another, then a hand, grasping at the floor, pulled itself up, emerging slowly, dripping. A face, white, eyeless, mouth yawning wide. I dropped the candle. Darkness swallowed everything. I ran. I don't remember how I made it up the stairs, only that I slammed the door shut and pushed the sofa against it. My heart thundered in my chest. I locked myself in my room, curled into a ball on the bed, and waited for morning. The power came back around 5 a.m. I checked the basement later that day. No water. Nothing. The floor was dry, cleaner than before even. No trace of flooding. No mildew. The locked room stood wide open. Empty. Except for the hooks. They were swinging. Just a little. Like something had let go. I considered selling the house. I even called the agent, asked about the previous owner. Died, she said. In the basement. Carbon monoxide leak, they think. Sad story. How long was it empty? Almost 2 years. No buyers. Not until you. I thanked her and hung up. That night, I heard footsteps below me. Not creaks. Not groans. Footsteps. I didn't go down. I didn't sleep. Instead, I sat by the window, watched the creek rise and fall, and wondered what I'd brought into my life. What I'd awakened. Or worse, what had been waiting. And it wasn't done yet. I couldn't stay in the house another night. That morning, I packed a duffel with essentials, slammed it into the back seat of my car, and drove 2 hours north to my sister's place in Portland. She barely asked questions. I must have looked like I hadn't slept in days because I hadn't. But 2 days later, something gnawed at me. I kept thinking about the basement. That door. The hooks. The water. The pale thing clawing its way through the drain like it had been waiting there all along. Like it had found a new host. At 3 a.m. on the second night away, I shot up in bed drenched in sweat. I'd heard the scraping in my dream again. Not dream, memory. Something dragging across the basement floor. It had followed me. Somehow. Back at my sister's house. Things began to shift. Lights flickered. Her dog growled at empty corners. One night, I caught my niece standing in the hallway whispering into the air. "Who are you talking to, honey?" I asked. She smiled. "The man from the basement." She was 5. I didn't sleep again. I had to go back. Not to stay. Just to see. See if it was really happening, or if I was cracking under pressure. Stress hallucinations. Psychological trauma. Something treatable. Something with a name. I arrived at Brierwood Lane just after sunset. The sky was a dull, bruised orange, clouds thick and unmoving. I parked out front and stared at the house from the safety of the street. The windows were dark. Still. But the longer I stared, the more I thought I saw something shifting behind the glass of the basement-level window. A movement not tied to reflection or trick of light. Intentional. I stepped out and approached the front door, key ready. My hands were trembling. The moment I opened it, the house exhaled. A low sigh, like the air had been waiting to escape, or something had been holding its breath. Inside, the air was different. Thick. Not dusty or stale like you'd expect from a place sealed up for a week. Smelled wet. Alive. The kind of humidity that clings to your skin, seeps into your lungs. The floorboards under my feet felt softer. I stepped carefully, gripping the railing as I approached the basement door. It was ajar. Of course it was. The deadbolt I'd installed was shattered. Twisted metal dangled like a broken wrist. I pushed the door wider with my foot. Darkness pooled at the bottom of the stairs, even though the basement lights should have been functional. I tried the switch. Nothing. I turned on the flashlight on my phone and took a deep breath, and stepped down. 1 stair. 2. The third creaked like it hadn't been touched in decades. The smell hit me again. Sickly sweet rot layered beneath the stink of wet concrete. A rush of memories poured in. The water. The hand. That thing crawling toward me like a newborn through oil. The flashlight trembled in my hand. The basement was empty. No water. No movement. But something had changed. The walls were slick. Literally slick. Condensation? No. The flashlight caught something sticky on the surface. Long, wet smears, as though hands had run up and down the walls. Smears that led to the bolted room. This door was wide open. The iron hooks inside, gone. Not broken. Gone. The drain, too, was dry, but cracked wider now. Jagged, black gaps spread like spiderwebs across the concrete floor beneath it. I stepped in, and the door slammed shut behind me. I whipped around, dropped the phone. The light spun wildly, illuminating shadows as they crawled up the walls. I dove for the phone, caught a glimpse of something hunched near the far corner of the room. Pale, hairless, his back to me, breathing, long, deep breaths. I didn't move. The thing twitched, tilted its head like a dog sensing vibration. Then slowly it turned. No eyes, just sockets, deep twitching holes. And its mouth. No lips, just a wide, trembling slit filled with rows of wet, clenched teeth. It opened its arms, reached for me. I screamed, and everything went black. When I woke, I was in the hallway upstairs. Daylight. My phone was beside me, battery at 4%. No missed calls, no texts, just a video running in the background, one I didn't remember recording. I opened it. The footage was shaky. Basement floor. My feet visible at the bottom of the frame. Then the camera lifted, panned toward the open room. The hooks were back. Something hung from them. Something human-shaped. Naked. Blood dripping from its feet. It swayed gently as if stirred by a wind I couldn't feel. And then, from behind the camera, a voice. My voice. Whispered, "Welcome home." I shut the phone off. Burned it that night. The next morning, I boarded up the basement door. Nailed it shut. Moved the fridge in front of it. Slept with the lights on and my back to the wall. But the scraping never stopped. The floor creaks when I'm not walking. I hear whispering through the vents. And I've started to see things in the mirror. Reflections that aren't mine. A face behind mine. Pale. Watching. I don't know what I brought into my life when I bought this house. But I know now it was never about the basement. It was about what was underneath it. Waiting. Waiting for someone stupid enough to walk in with a smile and a mortgage. And now it's awake. The nightmares became something worse. They stopped feeling like dreams and started feeling like memories. Fragmented scenes stitched together with dread. I'd wake up gasping, unsure if I was still dreaming or had wandered downstairs in my sleep. At first, I kept a journal beside the bed to write them down, hoping logic would bring clarity. But each morning I'd wake to pages already filled in. Handwriting that was mine, but jagged, like someone had scrawled it in a panic over and over. It's not in the basement anymore. It's in the walls. The first time I found that written, I laughed it off. A dream. Sleepwalking. Maybe I wrote it and didn't remember. But the second time it was carved into the wooden nightstand, deep enough to splinter. And that time the phrase had changed. You let it out. That's when I started to hear it during the day. It no longer waited for 2 a.m. The footsteps beneath the floor became bold, crossing beneath me even while I worked in the living room. The knock on the closet door came at 4 p.m. sharp. Once, then again, then silence. I checked. Nothing there. But the faint sound of breathing didn't go away. I called a contractor, told him I needed someone to seal off the entire basement, maybe fill the stairwell with concrete. He laughed at first, then paused when I didn't. He came the next day. Friendly guy, early 40s, named Mitch. He wore a tool belt that looked like it had seen a few too many houses built in the 1800s. We shook hands and I offered coffee. Told him to take a look and let me know what could be done. He was downstairs 5 minutes before I heard him scream. It wasn't a panicked yell or someone startled. It was raw, primal, something wet and tearing underneath. I ran down and found him on the floor, covered in dust, his hands shaking. "The walls," he muttered. "What?" He pointed to the far corner of the bolted room. "There's something behind the wall. Something inside it." I followed his gaze. There was a hole, freshly punched into the concrete, maybe 3 inches wide, jagged like it had been ripped open from the inside, and from it spilled a black sludge, thick and oozing, pooling across the floor like tar. The smell was unbearable. Mitch stood, nearly stumbling over his own boots. I can't do this job," he stammered. "I don't know what the hell you got down here, man, but it's not right. Not natural." He left. Didn't charge me. Didn't return my calls. His number stopped working the day after. That night, I woke to a knock on the bedroom door. Not the front door. Not the basement door. My bedroom door. 3 soft taps. I held my breath. Then again. 3 more. I sat up in the dark, sweating. The room was cold, too cold. My breath came out in clouds. I reached for my phone. Dead. I turned toward the door, inching my feet to the floor. Every creak sounded like thunder. The hallway beyond the door was pitch black. I waited, hand inches from the knob. Silence. I opened it slowly. The hallway was empty, except, at the end of it, a dark shape stood against the basement door, what remained of it. The wood looked like it had been clawed through from the inside, deep gashes dug into it like animal scratches. The fridge I'd moved in front of it, toppled. The nails I'd hammered in, scattered across the floor. The door now hung open like a broken jaw, blackness bleeding out of it. And the shape that stood there, it was me, but wrong. My face but stretched, pale. Veins black and pulsing beneath the skin like worming roots. My eyes were lidless, gouged open in a permanent stare. The smile I wore had no lips, just teeth, too many of them jagged and slick. It raised a hand, my hand, and beckoned. I slammed the bedroom door and shoved the dresser against it. Slept in the closet, holding a crowbar. I didn't sleep, not really. Just counted the hours until light returned. When it did, everything was still, quiet. I opened the bedroom door around noon. No shape, no scratches, no damage. The basement door was closed again. Still clawed up, still rotting, but shut. The only thing that changed? The mirror in the hallway. My reflection no longer moved in sync. Sometimes it blinked when I didn't. Sometimes it smiled when I frowned. Sometimes, at the edge of the glass, I saw another shape behind me, just watching. Always watching. I tried to leave, packed a bag, booked a room in a motel 2 towns over. When I stepped outside, my car was gone. Not stolen. Gone. Vanished. No tire tracks. No oil spots on the driveway. Just empty gravel. I walked 6 blocks to the diner and asked to use the phone. It rang 3 times, then picked up. My voice answered. "I'm sorry," it said, quiet and steady. "You can't leave. You're home now." The line went dead. I turned to the waitress, confused, panicking. Asked if I could try again. She frowned. "That phone's not connected." I left the diner and walked back home in a haze. The sky above me darkened too quickly, like time had skipped forward. The house stood waiting. Lights off, windows dark. And there on the porch sat my car keys. Just the keys. No note. No explanation. And when I stepped through the door, the lights came on their own. Every single one. I took a breath and froze. The basement door was open again. And from the bottom of the stairs came a voice, soft and melodic. "Come see what we've made for you." I dropped the keys and stepped inside. The stairs were longer now. I don't mean that metaphorically, I mean they stretched. Each step I took down into the basement felt like walking deeper into something that defied physical space. The air thickened, darker with every breath. The light from the ceiling above faded far too fast, and my body began to sweat and tremble. Not from fear, not entirely. From pressure. Like the very house had bent itself to accommodate something older. Deeper. The basement was not how I'd left it. The walls were breathing. No longer drywall and cinder block. Now a strange, pinkish flesh, pulsing gently as though air moved just beneath the surface. Veins the size of garden hoses throbbed with dark liquid. The floor was warm and sticky, and it reeked of copper and decay. I turned to flee, but the stairs were gone. Not collapsed, just gone. Behind me now was a long hallway of writhing muscle and sinew. In the distance, faint glimmers of light flickered like fireflies in tar. Then came the sound. Click, 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 click. From ahead, I took a step. The floor beneath my foot twitched. Another step. Click, click. The glimmers of light weren't lights. They were eyes. Dozens. Blinking, stretching open like newborns. Their gaze fixed solely on me. And then the voice again, louder this time. 1,000 mouths whispering in unison. Some deep, some high-pitched, layered together like a choir stitched together with nails and sinew. You made a home for us. I tried to scream, but my throat seized shut. The air felt poisoned, vibrating in tune with the voice. You broke the seal. You let us in. A shape moved ahead, not crawling, flowing. A silhouette the size of a bear, but with the movements of liquid. Its limbs unfolded in spirals, twitching as though uncertain how to use them. It had too many fingers, too many jaws. It didn't attack. It opened. Its torso peeled open like a blooming flower, revealing a mirror inside. Shimmering, reflective. I looked. It showed me my house. Me sitting in the living room, drinking coffee, smiling. Then me again, lying in bed, asleep. Then me in the shower. But wrong. My reflection didn't match my movements. Behind me, in the mirror, shadows moved that weren't there in reality. The voice returned. You are not alone. You have not been for some time. I blinked. The basement melted away, and I was back upstairs, standing in front of the bathroom mirror. Naked, soaked in mud and something thicker. The shower was on, but the water was red. Not water, blood. It poured from the showerhead like a hose from a slaughterhouse. And then the door behind me creaked. I spun around. Nothing. Just steam. But when I turned back to the mirror, the reflection still faced away. And it was smiling. I ran. Out of the bathroom, down the hall, straight for the front door. I flung it open. There was no street, no lawn. Just black. Endless, devouring black. And shapes. Crawling across the dark like ink dropped in water. Crawling toward me. I slammed the door shut, and found myself back at the bottom of the basement stairs. The door above me sealed like stone. I was trapped, and something waited in the dark. I heard it breathing, but not with lungs. With all of it. The walls. The floor. The very house itself inhaled and exhaled. And with each motion the temperature dropped. The thing was no longer content to be below. It was everywhere. I walked forward, and the space around me changed again. Now I was in the hallway, but not my hallway. A twisted mockery. The doors were swollen, pulsating like boils ready to burst. The wallpaper wept thick, black ichor. Something moved behind each door, scratching, whimpering, begging. Then the whispers came again. Not words now, just sounds. Mimic sounds. My own voice. The voice of my sister. My niece, calling out for help. But distorted. Wrong. Like a child trying to mimic human speech through a broken toy speaker. Help me. I shut my ears. Ran until my legs gave out. Collapsed on the floor, somewhere in that twisting, breathing house that used to be mine. My hands trembled. My eyes watered from the stench. Then I saw her. My niece. Standing in the doorway of what used to be the guest room. She wasn't blinking. Her eyes were pitch black, lips stitched shut with wire. But she raised one hand and pointed. Behind me, I turned, and saw myself again, but decayed, rotted, flesh sagging from my face like melted wax, lips torn, hands clawed and soaked in blood. It smiled, and it spoke in my voice. You've been sleeping for a long, long time. Then it reached out, and the floor dropped from beneath me. I fell, and fell, and fell, until the world went red. And I was home again. I opened my eyes to silence. Morning light filtered through the blinds in hazy bands. Birds chirped outside like nothing had happened. My sheets were damp with sweat, twisted around me like a cocoon. The house was still, normal. For a moment, I thought it might have all been a dream. But my fingernails told a different story, raw, packed with black dirt. My feet were bruised. My tongue tasted like rust. I limped to the bathroom, washed my hands 3 times before I dared look in the mirror. It was me. No smile, no distortion. But I watched for longer than usual. Waited to see if the reflection blinked first. Didn't. The basement door was closed. Still clawed. Still half broken. But closed. I didn't go near it. Not that day. Not the next. Days passed. A week. The house seemed to forget. But I didn't. I heard no more footsteps. No more breathing. The walls were dry again. Until one night the phone rang. An old landline in the kitchen I hadn't even hooked up yet. I didn't recognize the sound at first. Just stared at it, confused. Let it ring 6, 7 times before picking it up. A soft voice answered before I could speak. My own voice. You left the door open. Click. I ran to the basement. Still closed. Still nailed. I added a padlock. Bolted it. Moved 2 bookshelves in front of it. I didn't care if it looked insane. I wasn't letting it out again. But something else happened. I started sleepwalking. I'd wake up in strange places, curled under the kitchen table, sitting on the floor of the hallway. Once, I woke up standing at the top of the basement stairs. Nails missing, lock removed, door cracked just an inch, like something was waiting to be invited. I installed cameras, inside and out, motion sensors, alarms. For weeks, nothing. Then one morning I checked the footage. 2:46 a.m. My bedroom door creaked open. I stepped out in my pajamas, eyes open but vacant, walking stiffly down the hall, toward the basement. I paused in front of the door, then turned, and smiled directly into the camera. Not my smile. Something else wore my face. The mouth stretched too far, teeth too sharp. Then the image cut to static. All files corrupted. I stopped checking the cameras after that. People don't come to the house anymore. Not because I told them what happened. Because something warns them. Strangers feel it. Delivery drivers leave packages at the edge of the property. The mailman once threw my letters onto the porch like he didn't want to linger. Priest came once. He never made it past the front room. He stood silently for a long time, eyes scanning the walls. Then said, "There's something ancient here." I nodded. He left without blessing a thing. I've tried to leave 100 times. Every time the road loops. The town folds in on itself. A circle. I drive 10 minutes and somehow end up back at the same intersection. The same cracked billboard reading, "Welcome to Brierwood, where you'll always feel at home." Always. So I stopped trying. The house wants me here. Whatever I let out that night, it doesn't need the basement anymore. It wears my face. It leaves during the day. I've seen it. Walking the streets. Smiling at neighbors. Living a life. But it returns at night. Stands over my bed and watches me sleep. I can feel it breathe. We're not 2 beings anymore. We're one. And sometimes when I look in the mirror long enough, I see it blink before I do. Waiting. Knowing. That one day, I'll stop resisting. I'll walk back down into that living, breathing thing under my house. And never come back up. Because I was never meant to. I was just the door. and I left myself open. I was 13 when my cousin Ben went missing. He vanished from his parents' basement during a 4th of July barbecue in 1997. We were all there that night. Family, friends, sparklers in the yard, music blasting from a tinny boombox. The adults were drunk on cheap beer and the scent of lighter fluid, and us kids had the run of the house. Ben and I were close, the kind of cousins who might as well have been brothers. We were born a year apart, got in trouble together, and built haunted houses out of sheets and lamps. That night we made a plan. Sneak away from the boring barbecue and go downstairs to finish the horror movie we'd been watching earlier, Phantasm 2. It was around 9:15 p.m. when we slipped down into the basement with a bowl of Doritos and a flashlight. Ben's parents' place was one of those older houses in a Chicago suburb. Yellow siding, sagging gutters, and a musty, semi-finished basement with wood panel walls and one of those old gas heaters that clicked loudly when it turned on. It had one small window, dusty and high near the ceiling, covered by a rusting metal grate. We sat on bean bags, flipping between static and movie channels, laughing at how stupid the monster looked. I remember I went upstairs to grab a Coke. Only gone for 5 minutes, 10 tops. When I came back, Ben was gone. The TV buzzed with static. I called his name once, then again louder. Ben? You hiding? Nothing. I checked behind the couch, under the desk, in the laundry room. I remember being annoyed, not scared. I thought he was pulling a prank, hiding in the crawlspace or behind the water heater. But as the minutes passed, and the air in the basement seemed to grow heavier, I stopped calling his name. I went upstairs and told his mom. They searched the whole house, then the neighborhood. The fireworks stopped. So did the music. By midnight, cops were swarming the property. They questioned everyone, pulled apart the basement piece by piece. But they found nothing. No sign of forced entry. No broken windows. The doors were locked. Ben was never seen again. They questioned me, of course. Last one to see him. I told the truth, but it didn't matter. A kid goes missing, and everyone looks sideways at the one who was with him last. No body, no answers, just a hole where Ben used to be. For years I tried to forget, until 2016. I was 32, divorced, drifting from job to job in Des Moines. My mom called and said Ben's parents were selling the house, moving to Florida. Would you come help clean it out? She asked. It's just a few boxes, old junk in the basement. I said yes without thinking. It had been nearly 20 years. I drove up that weekend, pulled into the same cracked driveway, same yellow house, just older, tired. The porch sagged worse than I remembered. Paint peeled like sunburned skin. Inside, the house smelled like dust and lemon cleaner. Ben's parents had aged into quiet people, shrunken, polite. His mom still had the same short haircut and rose-scented perfume. His dad sat in a recliner and barely looked at me. I asked where to start. The basement, she said, handing me a box of trash bags. Old toys, blankets, nothing important. The door creaked just like before. I hesitated on the threshold. The air hit me cooler, damp. The scent of mildew and rust hadn't changed. My footsteps echoed as I descended. The wood paneling still stood, now warped and bubbled in places. The gas heater sat in the same spot, its pilot light blinking faintly. A cardboard box waited on the coffee table. Marked, Ben's stuff. I sat down, opened it. Inside were drawings, crumpled notebooks, an old flashlight, a half-empty soda can I recognized instantly, surge long discontinued. I felt like I was falling into a hole in time. Then I found the VHS tape. Unlabeled. Black plastic. No markings. I set it aside. Something shifted in the air. A creak from the far end of the basement. I froze. The laundry room door, slightly ajar, moved just an inch. I stood. Hello. No answer. I moved slowly, past the couch, toward the door. The laundry room was empty, but the crawlspace hatch was open. I crouched, stared into the dark gap, no taller than 2 feet, stretching back under the house like a throat. A rotten smell leaked from it, wet soil and something older, animal. I slammed it shut, nailed it shut. The tape. I took it upstairs. Found the old VCR still hooked up in the living room. Slid the tape in. Static. Then a flicker. A shot of the basement from a low angle. The camera jittered. Muffled breathing. Ben's face appeared. He looked nervous. Pale. Testing. Okay. This is working, he whispered. The tape cut. Another flicker. Ben in the crawlspace. Dirt walls around him. Holding the flashlight. His voice shook. I heard it again last night. The whispering. Cut. Ben deeper in. Face streaked with dirt. It keeps saying my name. Another cut. Then, blackness. Breathing. Then something else breathed. A different rhythm. Low and wet. Then Ben's scream. High, short, and cut off mid-note. The screen went black. The tape ended. My hands shook. I rewound the tape. Watched it again. And that's when I noticed it. A shape. In the final frame. Crouched in the dark behind Ben. Not a man. Long arms. No eyes. Mouth too wide. It grinned. And in the very last half-second before the tape stopped, its hand reached forward. Toward the lens. I ejected the tape with trembling hands. The room suddenly felt 20 degrees colder. Like the air itself had grown aware of me. I could hear the soft hum of the gas heater downstairs. The same one from when we were kids. It clicked as the flame inside sparked. Like a heartbeat out of rhythm. Ben's parents were upstairs packing photo albums. I didn't tell them about the tape. Not yet. Not until I understood. Instead, I went back down into the basement. Something had changed. I stood halfway down the staircase, gripping the banister, staring into the room below. The laundry room door was open wider than before. The crawlspace hatch, which I had nailed shut, was now clean. No scratches, no nail holes, no signs it had ever been sealed. Like it wanted to be forgotten. But I remembered. The tape proved that Ben hadn't disappeared upstairs. He'd gone down deeper, into that throat of dirt and secrets, and something had been waiting for him. I turned on the flashlight app on my phone and knelt by the crawlspace. The scent of wet earth filled my nose, thick and sour like compost. The hatch was cool to the touch. I pushed it open. Darkness, thick and perfect. I shined the light inside. The crawlspace looked as I remembered, wood beams, plastic sheet over the soil. But there were disturbances. Mounds, like something had tunneled through recently. And symbols, scrawled on the beams in black marker or maybe charred wood. Circles, eyes, jagged teeth, repeating patterns, obsessive and chaotic. My chest tightened. My breath grew short. I crawled inside. Each move forward was a decision I immediately regretted. The walls pressed closer than I remembered. The floor squelched. The plastic liner had torn in places, revealing raw dirt soaked through with something black and slick. But I couldn't stop. 10 feet in, the smell changed. No longer just mildew and rot. Now burnt hair, blood, a copper tang that clawed at my throat. Then I saw it. A hole, carved crudely into the far wall of the crawlspace, just barely big enough for a child to squeeze through. The wood around it was stained dark brown, rimmed in claw marks. I reached forward. The wood felt warm. And then the whispering began. Soft, right behind my ear. A voice I hadn't heard in 19 years. Eric. Ben's voice. Eric. Help me. I froze. Ben. I croaked. Down here, the voice said, just a little more excited. I'm stuck. I pulled back. Every cell in my body screamed. But something else urged me forward. Something under the voice. A current pulling me by the spine. I stuck my head into the hole. The space beyond was not a crawl space anymore. It was a room. No, not a room, a void. The walls were red, veined, pulsing. And in the center something stood. Not Ben, but close. It looked like him. First, but taller, arms too long, skin stretched thin like wax over twigs. Its mouth was wide and still. The corners reached its ears. And its eyes, those were wrong. Just sockets. Deep, weeping black fluid. Spoke again. In his voice. Help me. But the mouth didn't move. The voice was inside my head now. Come inside, Eric. You left me down here. You need to finish what we started. I scrambled back. Faster than I thought possible. I slammed into the wall of the crawlspace, bruising my shoulder, and kicked out until I tumbled into the basement. The hatch slammed shut behind me with no force I could see. My phone screen had cracked. The flashlight flickered, then died. I backed away. The symbols on the beams glowed faintly now. And from beneath the floor, I felt a vibration. A heartbeat. It was still alive. Not Ben. Not really. Something else wore him like a mask. I ran. I didn't speak to Ben's parents. I just left. My mother called that night. Said I forgot my duffel bag. Said Ben's mom was crying. Said she found something in the basement. Polaroid. Of Ben and me. Dated July 4, 1997. But in the photo something was off. Behind us, in the shadows of the basement, a tall figure stood. Black eyes. Long mouth. Blurred like a lens couldn't quite capture it. She thought it was a smudge. I knew better. I didn't sleep that night. The next morning I got a voicemail. From Ben's old number. The one that had been disconnected for years. Played it. It was faint static, then breathing. Then the voice. Don't you miss the basement? I smashed my phone the next day. Not just out of fear, but instinct. Like someone swatting a wasp that won't die. I wrapped it in a towel and pounded it with a hammer until the plastic cracked and the screen bled colors. Then I threw the remains in the river. Still, the calls continued. Not on a phone. In dreams. In the hum of fluorescent lights. In the spaces between thoughts. Like a worm coiling around memory. Sometimes I'd be brushing my teeth, staring into the mirror, and the voice would slide behind my eyes. Come back, Eric. I knew it wasn't just haunting me. It was calling me, pulling me back to the place where it had taken Ben, where it had worn his voice like a skin. And eventually I went. Not because I was brave, because I couldn't function. I lost my job, stopped answering calls. Friends faded. Food tasted like ash. The world blurred, and only one thing stayed sharp, the memory of that whisper. I returned to the house. Ben's parents had sold it months earlier, but the new owners hadn't moved in yet. The porch sagged worse. Windows were boarded. The grass was chest-high, but I had the old key. It still fit. I stepped inside. The house welcomed me with silence. No breeze, no creaks. Just a damp stillness, like breath held too long. The smell of mildew was stronger than ever, like it had soaked into the walls and bones of the place. I didn't waste time. I went straight to the basement. Each step down the stairs felt like a betrayal of logic. My heart beat in my throat. Sweat pooled at the base of my spine. The air grew colder, heavier, more dense, like walking underwater. The basement was exactly as I remembered it. Same warped paneling. Same gas heater clicking in the corner. But the crawlspace hatch? Already open. No lock. No nails. The floor beneath it was stained. Not fresh, not wet, but dark. As if the dirt had been bleeding for years. And the whisper was waiting. Eric? Soft. Coaxing. I crawled in. This time I brought a flashlight and a camcorder. I don't know why. Maybe I thought I could document it. Maybe I thought proof would make it real. Or maybe I didn't expect to come back. The crawlspace was colder than before. The beams seemed to bend inward, like the house itself had curled around this secret. Roots had broken through the floor above, hanging like veins, dripping with sap the color of oil. And there it was again, the hole, still there, still pulsing, like a mouth waiting for breath. I turned on the camera and aimed it at the opening. No sound, no movement, until the screen flickered, and on the tiny LCD, I saw what my eyes could not. Then, standing inside, just beyond the veil, he didn't move, didn't blink, but the camera shuddered, and the audio warped. A voice spoke, not his, deeper, crackling like wet paper. "You've always been with us." I lowered the camera. Nothing there. I raised it. Ben again. Now closer. Mouth open. Inside his mouth, more faces. Twisted. Stretched. Dozens. Screaming silently. Pressed against the inside of him like prisoners behind glass. I shut the camera off. Crawled backward, scraping elbows, knees. Every instinct howled at me to run. But the hatch was gone. Only dirt. Solid. Sealed. I turned. The hole behind me was gone, too. Only wall. I was inside now. No exit. No map. Only dark. And then the sound. Dripping. Thick. Wet drops hitting the floor in a steady rhythm. I turned, and the flashlight revealed something etched into the soil. A circle. Carved deep. At the center, a crude figure. Stick limbs, hollow eyes. It moved. Not the dirt, the etching. The carved limbs twitched, uncurled, and lifted itself out of the ground. A thing of lines and mud and eyes. It didn't speak. It just reached for me. I screamed. I grabbed the flashlight and beat at the wall, dug with my hands, tore at the roots. Then, a hand broke through from the other side. Not mine, not Ben's, but something human-like. Clawed, touched my shoulder gently. Then everything went white. When I woke up, I was in the back seat of my car, parked 3 blocks from my apartment. The camcorder sat in the passenger seat, still running. The footage, unviewable, every second corrupted. Only one frame remained, frozen, burned into the digital tape. Me, standing in the crawlspace. But my eyes were gone, and someone else, taller, boneless, stood behind me, hands resting on my shoulders, like a parent proud of their child, or a sculptor admiring their work. After the crawlspace incident, I didn't speak for 3 days. Words felt dangerous, like they might conjure something back. I sat in my apartment, blinds drawn, camcorder sealed in a trash bag and buried under laundry. But every so often, even through the silence, I heard that old voice. Not in my ears, in my bones. Like a tuning fork buried inside me was still vibrating from that place. Ben, or what was left of him. I knew it wasn't over. That night I had a dream. I was a child again, sitting on that scratchy basement carpet, legs crossed. Ben sat across from me, grinning, holding a flashlight under his chin. "We never finished the game," he said. I didn't answer. "You made a promise, remember?" I shook my head. He leaned forward, his mouth unhinged. Too far, too wrong. And from it spilled hundreds of teeth, all chattering in unison like wind-up toys. He didn't speak again, but a whisper curled up from the dark behind him. "Finish the game." I woke up screaming. I needed answers. If this thing was using Ben, if it had worn him like a shell, then there had to be something else, something real beneath the horror. Some root. I drove back to Chicago the next morning. But the yellow house was gone. Not torn down, erased. A construction site now. Workers milling about, pouring foundation. Fresh rebar sticking out of cement. I pulled over and walked to the fence. "Hey!" I called to a guy with a clipboard. "What happened to the house that was here?" He looked up. "You knew the Grady place?" "Yeah." "Condemned last winter. Gas leak. Then a sinkhole opened under it. Real freak event. Swallowed half the structure." I felt my stomach twist. "What happened to the basement?" He laughed. "Gone. They filled the whole thing with concrete. Nothing left but dirt." But that wasn't true, because something had come out of it. I turned and walked back to my car. That night, I returned to my apartment and found a package on my doorstep. No return address. Inside, the camcorder. The same one I buried under a pile of old laundry and locked in my closet. The bag was gone. It was clean, charged, and the screen was glowing. New footage, 1/7/2017 3:19 a.m. That was the next day. It hadn't happened yet. I opened it. The footage showed my apartment. My bedroom, shot from the hallway, zoomed in just enough to see me asleep in bed. Then the camera panned to the mirror, and Ben stood in the reflection. But only there. He raised one hand and pointed directly at the lens. The video ended. The timestamp updated. Same day, 3:20 a.m. I waited up that night, didn't sleep, sat in the corner of my room with every light on, crowbar across my lap. 3:19 came. Silence. 3:20. A creak. In the hallway. I stood slowly, crowbar tight in my grip, and that's when I saw it. The bathroom mirror, covered in condensation. No hot water had run. No steam. Just breath. Words formed slowly in the fog. You finished the game, then the mirror cracked. I ran. No shoes, no coat. Just ran into the street like a madman, screaming into the night. The cops found me 2 miles away, muttering nonsense. I told them about the mirror. They found no writing, no cracks, just my own fingerprints, and the camcorder, still in my hand. I told them to destroy it. They didn't. They gave me 2 nights in psychiatric observation. I didn't speak once, but I listened, because somewhere in the ventilation shafts of that sterile hospital, I could hear the chattering. Teeth, clicking like bones tapping glass, always just out of sight. When they released me, I went home and destroyed every mirror in my apartment. Then I bought a dog, a mutt, shepherd mix, big, loyal, protective. I named him Phantom. For a few weeks it was quiet, until one night Phantom sat by the bedroom door, growling at something I couldn't see. Low, guttural growls, head lowered, body tensed like he was about to pounce. Then his ears went flat. He whimpered once, and backed away, and I heard it again. Ben's voice. Eric, I'm still here. This time I didn't run. I stood, faced the empty hallway, and whispered, "What do you want?" No answer, just laughter, quiet, cruel. A voice not meant for human throats. Then a knock, from under the floorboards. 3 sharp raps. I dropped to my knees and pressed my ear to the floor. Something was breathing beneath my house. Something was coming through. I ran to the basement door. I never had a basement before, but there it was, right where the kitchen pantry used to be. A door I'd never noticed. Old, wood swollen with moisture, rusted handle, and on it, carved into the grain with something sharp, a message. Welcome home. The basement door shouldn't have existed. Not just because it wasn't there the day before, but because this apartment had no basement. I'd lived here 6 years. I'd signed the floor plan. I knew every creak and corner of this place. There was no room below, no foundation deep enough. But the door didn't care about logic. Simply was. I stood there for what felt like hours, fingers hovering over the knob. Phantom whimpered at my side, pacing in tight circles. His tail was tucked, ears down. A primal kind of fear radiated off him. Something older than the words to describe it. I finally turned the handle. It moaned like a grave opening. Beyond it, stairs. Rough with steps leading downward into darkness. Steeper than any stairs had a right to be. The walls were dirt. No drywall. No finish. Just earth and stone pressing in close like a throat. I should have run. Should have nailed the door shut. Burned the whole building down if I had to. But I descended. Phantom didn't follow. At the 3rd step, the door closed behind me on its own. At the 5th, the temperature dropped. Each breath fogged before my face. The air smelled like home. Old carpet, sugar cereal, summer sweat. Like childhood. And rot. By the 10th step, the darkness had changed. It wasn't just absence of light, it was substance. It clung to my skin. Crawled into my mouth. I shined my flashlight, but it barely cut the gloom. The staircase opened into a room. And I froze. I was standing in the Grady's basement. Ben's basement. Every detail. Same paneling. Same couch. Same blinking gas heater in the corner. But degraded. Rotting. As if time had devoured the place and spit it back out as a memory wrapped in mold. And in the center of the room stood Ben. Or the thing that still called itself that. It looked more like him now. Closer to the boy I remembered. But something was wrong beneath the skin. It flickered. Glitched. Like a corrupted VHS tape. "Eric," he said. His voice cracked. "You left me here." I took a step forward. "I didn't know," I whispered. "I went to get a Coke. I was gone for 5 minutes." He smiled. That smile split his face too wide. It was enough time. Then the room pulsed. The walls flexed. And everything around me breathed once. Long and low. Like some ancient lung filled the space. The light died. The floor gave way. And I fell again. But this time I landed. In dirt. Cold. Wet. I was on my knees in a tunnel. Narrow. Crawling with centipedes. The sound of chattering teeth ahead of me. Ben's voice echoed down the tunnel. "This is the real basement." I crawled. My hands bled. My knees turned raw. I didn't know how long I moved, minutes, hours, days. The tunnel seemed to grow around me, reshaping with my every breath. And then the whispers stopped. Clearing. A chamber. Walls made of jawbones and ribcages, arranged in spirals. Eyes blinked from the ceiling like barnacles. Blood dripped from cracks in the walls. And in the center stood a table. On it, the camcorder. Still recording. I approached. My face filled the screen. But I wasn't holding the camera. Something else was. A figure taller than the room. Hunched. Wearing my skin like a robe. It moved. And behind me, I heard Ben again. Closer this time, beside my ear. "You finished the game, Eric." I turned. Nothing. Just a mirror cracked and fogged. And a message scrawled in breath. "You're home now." The lights went out. And I woke up in my bed. No basement door. No dirt on my feet. Only the camcorder on my nightstand. New footage. Timestamp. Today. 3:33 a.m. I pressed play. It showed me, asleep. Then me standing. Then me opening the wall behind the bathroom mirror. Climbing through it. Laughing. And then, from behind the camera, a voice, my voice, spoke. "Tag, you're it." The tape ended. I looked in the mirror across the room. My reflection didn't move. It just stood there, smiling, waiting. I was hired to clean out dead people's homes. Not in a glamorous way, not like antique pickers or estate curators. I was a private contractor specializing in trauma scenes, hoarder recoveries, unattended deaths. The kind of jobs no one else wanted. Biohazard suits, mold masks, reinforced gloves. People called me when they couldn't bear to open the door. That's how I ended up at the Madsen house. It sat on the edge of a rural highway in northern Minnesota. Pale blue siding peeling like sunburn. Detached garage half collapsed. The grass had grown waist-high, reclaiming the walkways. My client was the county, no family left. The owner, Arthur Madsen, had died in the basement. Alone. Unattended for 3 weeks. Cause of death. Inconclusive. That always meant one thing, something too decomposed for certainty. The body was gone. Already handled by the coroner. But the mess? That was mine to clean. I arrived just before dusk. The sky stretched wide and indifferent. Clouds stacked in bruised columns. The house greeted me with silence. No birds, no insects. Just wind skimming the tall grass like whispered breath. I'd seen worse houses, but not one that felt this aware. Unlocking the front door was like unsealing a vault. The air that escaped hit me with heat and rot. A smell layered deep. Urine, mildew, sweet decay. I pulled on my respirator and pushed inside. The living room was choked with old furniture. Every surface was buried under magazines, broken clocks, ceramic figurines. I had to wade through it sideways, shifting boxes just to reach the kitchen. That's where the floor changed. From wood to linoleum. And the linoleum was wet. I checked the ceiling. No leaks, no broken pipes, but the floor pulsed slightly when I stepped, like a sponge. The basement door stood at the far end of the kitchen. Wooden, painted red, locked with a keyhole unlike any I'd seen. Not a modern deadbolt. It looked old, Victorian, maybe, almost ceremonial. But the lock was already broken, splintered wood, like someone had forced it open from inside. I hesitated, checked my work order again. Hazard cleanup, level 3. Bioremediation, Madsen residence. Do not remain after nightfall. I'd seen notes like that before, county dispatch trying to be spooky. Superstition passed around for liability reasons. But something about this line, do not remain after nightfall, felt different. I opened the basement door. The smell multiplied instantly. Sweet, syrupy rot, like fruit left in the sun, mixed with iron and bile. I flicked on my headlamp. The stairwell stretched into a black void. I began my descent. 7 steps down, my foot squelched. The floor wasn't concrete. It looked like concrete, but it moved, just slightly, like a pulse. I scanned the room. Basement was large, wider than the house above. Stone walls, a drain in the center. The far wall held shelves of old books, jars filled with unidentifiable things suspended in amber fluid. Not like a hoarder's collection, more like a museum. Preserved. But the floor, I dropped to one knee and touched it with a gloved finger. It was skin. Dry, cracked, the color of ash. Not human. Not anything I could name. Just a taut membrane stretched across the entire floor, pulsing once every few seconds. The drain in the middle? A mouth. Not a gaping hole. A circular depression ringed in twitching tissue, like the sphincter of a creature that breathed slowly. I stumbled back. Something moved in the shadows behind the furnace. I turned. Just pipes. I scanned the floor again. And there, along the wall, scratch marks. Fingernails. Scraping. Dozens of them. A story etched in desperate lines. People clawing, dragging, pulled. This wasn't just where Madsen died. This was where he'd been taken. I moved closer to the far wall where the jars sat. Each held a piece of something that shouldn't have existed. Teeth with too many roots. An eyeball the size of a baseball split down the middle like a fruit. Fingers with 3 knuckles. But one jar was shattered. The shelf around it smeared in thick fluid. I lifted the headlamp and followed the trail to the wall. Tunnel. A hole in the stone barely wide enough to crawl through. And something inside it breathed. Not loudly, but rhythmically. I reached for my phone to photograph it. No signal. The flashlight flickered. Then I heard it. A sound like someone crawling across wet tar. Then the voice. Low. Not quite human. Arthur. It wasn't a question. It was a greeting. Said the name like a friend might. Familiar. Almost fond. Then again. Arthur. You came back. I turned. The basement was empty. But the floor rippled once. The mouth in the center twitched. I backed toward the stairs. And something grabbed my ankle. I fell hard, shoulder slamming into the wall. My headlamp skittered across the floor. In the dark, I felt pressure against my leg. Fingers, but not fingers. Long, wet, segmented. Something wrapped around me. I kicked wildly. Broke free. Crawled. The stairwell seemed farther away now, stretched like a funhouse mirror. As I reached the stairs, the voice rose again. No longer calm. Hungry. Where are you going, Arthur? You just got home. I didn't look back. I didn't stop until I was in my truck, hands shaking too badly to start the engine. I peeled out down the highway, headlights trembling across the fields. I didn't file the report. I didn't return the keys. And I didn't go back. But that night, I found something in my laundry room. A red wooden door, identical to the one in the Madsen house. And it was open. The red door shouldn't have been there. I lived in a second-floor apartment. No basement. No crawlspace. The laundry room was a closet with a stacked washer and dryer. Nothing more. But when I opened it that night, hands trembling, heart trying to claw its way through my ribs. The machines were gone, replaced by that same red-painted door, cracked and ancient, humming with memory. His handle twitched as I stared. Then the smell reached me. Wet copper, old meat, soil that hadn't seen sunlight in centuries. I slammed it shut, tried to convince myself I was hallucinating. Stress. The cleanup job had broken something in me. Maybe I was sick. Maybe there was mold in the vents. I sat awake until dawn, cross-legged on the couch, crowbar across my lap. When the sun rose, I opened the laundry door again. Nothing but my washer and dryer. No red door. No pulsing air. Just Tide Pods and dryer sheets. I almost cried, but something lingered, a smell. Faint, but there. I quit my job the next day. No notice. No explanation. I stopped answering calls from the county. I stopped opening mail. I shut the curtains and taped every mirror in my apartment. My fridge emptied. My laundry piled. I didn't care, because every night, it came back. The red door, sometimes in the closet, sometimes beneath my bed, once inside my bathroom mirror opening like a wound in the glass. And always, always, the same voice. You left us, Arthur. It didn't matter that my name wasn't Arthur. Not anymore. It had chosen me. Or maybe, had chosen it. I started having the dreams. Dark tunnels. People screaming behind walls of flesh. Hands reaching up through cracked tile floors. Mouths sewn shut with wire, trying to speak without lungs. And then came the camera. It appeared one day on my doorstep in a plain brown box. No return address. Just a note inside. Your turn. The camera was old. Mid-90s style VHS. Heavy. Still smelled faintly of mildew. Inside a tape. Labeled in red marker. Downstairs. I didn't want to watch it. I watched it. The footage began in the Madsen house basement. Not the one I saw. This one was older. Brighter. As though filmed decades ago. A man stood in the center of the room. Pale. Thin. Naked except for stained boxers. He was muttering. Crying. Behind him, the drain pit mouth twitched open and shut. The camera panned to the corner where a woman stood. She was covered in something dark, oil or blood. Her eyes were gone. Not gouged, just gone. Smooth skin stretched across her sockets. She whispered, "Once you go down, it remembers you." Then the camera fell. The rest of the tape was static. Until the last 5 seconds. A still frame. Me. Filmed from behind. Standing in my laundry room in front of the red door. About to open it. I hadn't done that. Not yet. I rewound it. Same image. Me. Frame by frame I advanced. I turned the knob. Opened the door. Stepped inside. Fade to black. I didn't sleep that night. When I woke, the apartment was silent. Too silent. The fridge hummed, but wrong, out of sync. Like it breathed. I turned on every light. Carried my crowbar room to room. Everything was normal. Until I opened the coat closet. A stairwell had replaced the floor. Rough wood. Rotting. Going down. No bottom in sight. And on the first step, a single piece of paper. "Welcome back, Arthur." I screamed. Slammed the door. Nailed it shut. But that didn't stop it. Every time I closed one entrance, another appeared. Beneath the sink. Inside the oven. Once in the toilet bowl, staring up like an eye. And the whispers became more familiar. Not just calling me Arthur, but now speaking in my own voice. Mocking me. Repeating things I'd said years ago. Private things. Things only I could know. It watched me. It knew me. It was me. I stopped leaving the apartment. People who visited didn't see the doors. I tried showing a friend. He laughed. Said I needed rest. That night he called me crying. Said he had a dream about a basement with skin for walls. Said something whispered his name from his bathroom sink. He moved away the next day. I haven't heard from him since. But the doors haven't stopped. They multiply. Now there's one in my refrigerator. Another behind the medicine cabinet. They all lead to the same place. The breathing basement. The place under all places. And it waits for me to walk through. I started writing notes to myself. Not for sanity. That ship had already sailed. I wrote them so I could trace time. So I could prove to myself that I existed before this infection. The notes began simple. Do not open any door that wasn't there yesterday. Your name is not Arthur. If you see your own reflection blink out of sync, smash the mirror. But over time, the handwriting changed. Loopier, hesitant, childlike. One morning, I woke to find a new note pinned to my chest with a sewing needle. You've already opened it. The wound had scabbed over. I hadn't felt a thing. That day, all my mirrors were gone. Not shattered. Removed. Hung blank spaces where they'd been. No glass. No dust outlines. Just smooth wall. I tried taking photos of myself to prove I was still here. The camera wouldn't focus. When it did, the images blurred. My face distorted like melting wax. Sometimes a second face appeared behind mine, peeking just over my shoulder, smiling. One photo caught a glimpse of the red door, wide open, a pale hand reaching out from the dark. After that, I stopped using cameras. I stopped sleeping, because that's when the shift happened. The dreams no longer waited for me to fall asleep. I'd blink, just once, and wake up somewhere else. In the basement. Always the basement. But not a basement. The basement. The one beneath all basements. Built of bone and soil and regret. Ceiling low enough to force you to crawl. Floor slick with weeping moisture. Walls that pulsed, occasionally exhaling, releasing waves of heat that smelled like graveyards. I never knew how long I was there. Minutes? Hours? But every time I returned, things had changed in my apartment. A door moved 2 inches left. My toothbrush was soaking wet. My fridge was full of raw meat. Uncooked, unwrapped, arranged like organs. And the crowbar I kept for protection? Rusting, bent, like it had been used. On what I didn't know. Then came the nights where I moved. I'd wake up outside, standing barefoot in alleyways, shivering. One night, I woke up 3 towns away, in the ruins of a condemned home. My hand was full of dirt, my shirt stained with black liquid, and on the wall, scrawled in something dark, "You came back, Arthur. We're so proud." That was the night I checked myself into a psychiatric clinic. Voluntarily. 2-week hold. No electronics. Just meds and group therapy. They thought I was schizophrenic. Maybe I was. Still am. But the red door came with me. 3rd night there, it appeared in the janitor's closet. A nurse found me staring at it, muttering. When she looked, there was nothing. She gave me a sedative. That night, I dreamed of her face splitting open like a blooming flower. Eyes beneath skin. A second mouth beneath her jaw, whispering my name. Arthur, it's time to go home. I woke up in restraints. Apparently I'd attacked an orderly. Bit him. They discharged me after 10 days. No one called me Arthur again. Not the staff. Not the other patients. Only me. I moved after that. New city. New name. No forwarding address. New apartment. 3rd floor. No basements. I asked the landlord twice just to be sure. For a while, things were quiet. Until the first water stain appeared on the ceiling. Perfect circle. Small at first. Then bigger. Then it dripped. But it didn't smell like water. It smelled like the floor of the Madsen house. The stain pulsed when I touched it. And then I heard scratching in the walls. Low. Deliberate. Not rats. Not plumbing. Fingernails. 3 knocks. Always 3. Then, one morning, the doorknob on my closet turned itself. Slowly, the door creaked open. And behind my jackets, I saw it again. The red door. Wider than before. Open just a sliver. From it a voice deeper now. Less human. You can't keep pretending. You know what you are. I screamed. Slammed it shut. Threw everything I owned against it. But it didn't matter. Later that night, I checked the bathroom mirror. one of the few I hadn't taped over. My reflection smiled. I hadn't. Then it whispered, "Arthur, we've made your room ready." The final straw came when I found the note etched into my own skin. It was early morning, sky still dark, the kind of gray that hangs between night and day. I stumbled to the bathroom, still shaking from another dream I couldn't remember, and lifted my shirt to find a message carved faintly into my lower stomach. Not deep enough to bleed, just enough to welt. "The basement is in you now." I vomited, curled up on the bathroom floor and wept for an hour. I didn't know what that meant, not fully, but I felt it. Something had taken root inside me. Not metaphorically, physically. I could feel it in my spine, a pulsing that wasn't synced to my heart, a rhythm that kicked in only when I was alone, or scared, which was all the time. I tried checking myself into another hospital. They didn't take me, said I'd been admitted before too recently, told me to go home and rest. I laughed. Home. There was no such thing anymore. My home had become a passage, a gate. Every wall creaked with distant moaning. My closet oozed black tar I couldn't scrub off. My kitchen floor bulged with something breathing beneath the tile. My bedroom light flickered in patterns I eventually recognized as Morse code, repeating the same phrase, "Come down." So I did the unthinkable. I opened the red door, not because I wanted to, because I knew it would never stop otherwise. The door was larger now, nearly 7 feet tall, wide enough for something not quite human to crawl through. It didn't creak when it opened. It sighed. Warm air washed over me like exhale from a sleeping beast. Inside, darkness, but different this time. Structured. The walls were lined with bricks made of bone. The floor was soft like liver. There was a sound in the distance, mechanical and wet, like gears grinding through flesh. And something whispered beneath it all. Not words, names, thousands of them, said all at once. I stepped inside. The door shut behind me. No handle, no hinges, only heat, and a faint red glow pulsing at the tunnel's end. I walked. Time didn't pass. Not in a way I could measure. I saw things. A staircase that descended into a yawning jaw. A corridor lined with mirrors that didn't reflect me, but dozens of versions of Arthur Madsen, all decayed at different stages. Some old, some boys, some infants, all of them staring, none of them blinking. They mouthed a word in unison. Us. I ran, turned corner after corner. Every passage bled into another. Eventually I reached a chamber, circular, cathedral-sized, the ceiling so high it vanished. And in the center, a throne, made of door frames, hundreds, all red, stacked, nailed, bent, and sitting on it a figure. It looked like me, but older. I stitched shut, skin stitched open, and in its lap, a book, bound in human leather. It didn't move, didn't speak, but the walls did. They pulsed and whispered in my voice, telling me what I already knew. This wasn't Arthur's basement. It wasn't mine either. It was everyone's. All the forgotten places, all the locked doors, all the deaths with no explanation, all the screams that never reached the surface. They flowed here, fed it, grew it. I stumbled forward. The figure on the throne raised its hand, pointed at the ground. A hole opened, not a tunnel, not a portal, a grave, my size, dug deep into the flesh floor. Waiting, I backed away. The door behind me was gone. There was only the throne, the grave, and me. I screamed, fell to my knees, and the figure on the throne finally moved. It spoke, not with a mouth, but with a sound that made my ears bleed. You belong to us now. Then darkness swallowed everything. I don't remember waking up. One moment, I was falling, no sensation of impact, no transition. Just the sense of descending endlessly into the throat of something that knew me. The next, I was back in my apartment. Lights off, crowbar in hand, red door gone. I thought I'd imagined everything, but there were signs. My boots, caked in black earth. My fingernails, packed with tissue and grime. The smell, that smell, clinging to the sheets and the baseboards and the cracks in the wall. My phone had over 37 missed calls, all from numbers labeled unknown, each voicemail blank, except for the static of distant breathing. I tried to live normally, go outside, buy groceries, smile at people, but they looked through me, like something had emptied me out and filled the shape with wet paper and teeth. And the worst part? The red doors never left. They didn't appear as blatantly anymore. Not glowing, not whispering, no blood seeping from cracks. But they waited. I'd catch glimpses of them in other people's houses, on security monitors, on the underside of staircases in hotels, behind elevator panels, in the reflection of store windows at night. Once, on a cross-country train ride, I glanced into the gap between rail cars and saw a red door bolted to the interior wall, waiting at the edge of the coupling. It had no handle, only a slit in the center, like a mouth that watched. It's not just my problem anymore. That's what I've come to understand. That basement, it isn't a location. It's not a room beneath a house. It's a level of reality, a vein that runs under the skin of the world, a hidden structure that exists just behind the drywall, beneath the tile, beneath our understanding. It feeds off the forgotten, those who live alone, die alone, those no one checks on. It devours memory, identity, and leaves behind shells. I started seeing others like me, on the subway, in crowded streets, people who glance sideways too often, who flinch when near stairwells, who don't blink when they pass darkened windows. I recognized the mark behind their eyes, the subtle stretch in their smiles. We don't talk, we just nod, a mutual acknowledgement. You, too. The message boards were the worst part. At first, they gave me hope. People across the country describing the same things. Basements that shouldn't be there. Doors that moved. Voices calling them names they'd never told anyone. One user posted, "My dog won't enter the basement anymore. He used to love it. Now he growls at the laundry room." Another wrote, "I live in a 5th-floor apartment. My bathroom mirror fogged up last night." The words said, "Time to go down." The moderators tried to delete the posts. Then the users started going silent. Accounts deleted. Emails bouncing, one by one, until the forum was empty, all except for one pinned thread. A single sentence, "We've opened enough doors now," and beneath it a video link. I clicked it. It showed a red hallway, infinite, each side lined with doors. And behind every door, a me, not similar, exactly me. Hundreds, thousands, some missing eyes, some limbless, some smiling wide with mouths full of nothing but teeth. Each turned in perfect unison and whispered, "Welcome home, Arthur." I slammed the laptop shut, tore out the battery, burned it in the sink. Didn't matter. The video plays on my television now, randomly, middle of the night, no signal, just static. Then that hallway, every single time. I've moved 3 times. I rent under a different name. I don't leave forwarding addresses. But still, the doors appear. A new one behind the fridge last week. Wider, hungrier. I boarded it shut with 3 layers of plywood. It still knocks. 3 times. Every night. At 3:33 a.m. Sometimes I hear my voice on the other side. Sometimes it's my mother's. She's been dead for 7 years. I record what I can. Tape my doors shut. Sleep during the day. But I'm tired. So tired. I know the final door is coming. The last one. The one I won't be able to ignore. It's not here yet. But I feel it. Somewhere behind the walls. The floorboards. The fabric of the world itself. Waiting. Breathing. Smiling. And when it arrives, it won't ask permission. It won't knock. It'll just open. And whatever's been waiting down there all along, whatever wears Arthur's name like a mask, will finally crawl back through me. So now you know what's lurking below. But here's the question. Was it just their basement? Or do they all connect? If you've ever heard something moving beneath your floorboards, maybe it's not the pipes after all. Let me know in the comments. What's the creepiest thing you've ever seen or heard in your basement? And remember, some doors were never meant to be opened. Like, subscribe, bell, share if you want to hear what's behind the next door.